Are you searching for a deeper understanding of your faith?
Inspiring Philosophy is your go-to resource for exploring the rich tapestry of Christian thought.
From biblical archaeology to philosophy of mind, we dive into the topics that matter.
Our content bridges faith and understanding, offering insights into God's existence and the reliability of the New Testament.
Join a community where faith meets reason and discover the answers you've been seeking.
Inspiring Philosophy, where faith meets understanding.
Erase the name. Now every idol sounds the same. A generation on its knees, begging comfort, calling peace. Oh, this is the price of pride, dancing while the truth just dies. We fear the cross, embrace the chain. Our freedom's just another cage. In the ruins, a whisper stands, scarred and radiant, pierced hands. The silence breaks, the dark retreats. The king returned and thunder breaks. Where the last light fading under broken skies, chasing meaning in electric lights. But grace still burns where shadows fall. The dead arise, he conquers all. Take one last breath before the dawn takes back the
Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Inspiring Philosophy Academy. It's our second stream, and we got Tim here, the co-host, and we got
What's good,
Coley, the
y'all?
guy with the amazing jawline and really cool tats. Everybody, enjoy our Dragon Ball Z tats. Coley, yeah, there you go. Well, you got Naruto.
It's hard. It's hard to.
It is very
know?
hard.
You know,
It is very hard.
I got Trunks over here. There you go.
Heck yeah. All right, what are we doing today, boys?
We are responding to none other than Dan McClellan, and specifically a response he did to our response to a video he made badly interpreting John.
Awesome.
A response to a response to a response.
Yep.
Yes. Do you guys have any preliminary thoughts before we just kind of dig straight into the video?
I do. Holy though, go ahead. You can go first, bro. I'll let you have that.
I mean, I think some of them are actually just somewhat rhetorical, right? It's like we only did a 3-minute clip, so we can't draw out all of the depths and nuances of arguing for Jesus's divinity in John. We're just simply giving some snippet, responses, and then he does a 14-minute video in response. It's like, I don't know. It's just like, come on, bro. Like, yeah, anyone can take their shot at our video, but like, you don't want to debate anyone on this, so don't act like you're really coming with something great here.
Yeah.
So the interesting part about this, I'll add this, and then I got you, bro. The interesting thing about is in our 2-minute, 20-second, however long video that Coley and I did, that 14-minute video that Dan did in response, the majority of that is to my 20-second speech. Like my 20-second little excerpt, that's the majority of that video. By the way, guys, just letting y'all know. So everyone that's been coming in, been saying, you're too scared to respond to Dan. I've been getting a lot of that. You're too scared to respond to Dan. When are you going to respond to Dan? Well, we're doing it. It's my 20-second clip. So
nice.
Dan, go ahead.
And just to be clear, because I can hear it in the skeptic's head. This isn't meant to be a response to Dan's overall thesis. For people that are unaware, I have been studying Dan's book for the last 2 months, pretty in depth, and I'm planning on doing like a really in-depth response to that. And Tim, you are joining in on that parade, so I got to put this away. This is not a good fidget toy during a stream. It's my knife. But yes, so we're planning on doing a in-depth stream, in-depth response to Dan's Yahweh's Divine Images book. I'm actually gonna plan to contact Dan to make sure I'm not missing any puzzle pieces once I do enough research on this. But yeah, this is not a full in-depth response to his thesis. This is a response to a video that he made addressing Tim and Coley. So Tim and Coley, I'm gonna let you guys take the lead, and I'll just jump in whenever. And I just have to address one thing really quickly. Like, where'd it go though? Somebody said, "Yo, has Than been juicing?" No. If anything, I'm like really small right now. I'm really out of shape. The last year, I have been so busy with work that like my gym routine has been thrown off. Tim, you've seen me at like in my peak shape.
Yeah.
I look really doughy right now. It's really annoying.
This isn't even his final form.
Yes. But no, I'm just wearing a shirt that just happens to be not a box cut tee. This is I wear box cut shirts because
Therefore you're juicy.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll get to some super chats in a little bit. I'll pull up the stream. Do you guys have timestamps you want to go over, or do you want to just kind of go and then you'll tell me when to stop?
Coley, do you got timestamps, bro?
It's the one thing I didn't do.
That's all right.
This
all right,
is
we're
the
gonna go. And
wrong
we're gonna do our
thing.
game.
I am
already.
stupid.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I mean, he cuts it the video pretty easily. Like it's not. It'll be easy to just follow intuitively. I think.
Yeah. Just tell me when to pause.
Yeah.
I might just pause this whenever I get sick of some rhetorical stuff.
Yeah. But definitely just let him play the intro. So obviously you can kind of,
Fantastic.
Here we go. All right, here we go. Let me know if you can't hear it.
not even in John 8:58.
Jesus is definitely God in John 8:58.
All right, let's see it.
So let's check out what he has to say.
And in John 8:58, Jesus says, before Abraham was, ego eimi, which is Greek for I am. And this is a coded reference to the divine name.
Yeah, that's exactly what we'd expect if Jesus is in the process of revealing to us who he is, that he connects himself to bearing the divine name.
Yes, that's my point. Because Judaism already had traditions about mediator figures being the authorized bearers of the divine name, and therefore not only being able to do the things that only God is supposed to be able to do, but even to identify with God while not being God, which is the intuitive logic of divine images.
And Jesus...
So pause it right there.
Yeah.
So just for everyone watching, what Dan just said right there, he said everything without saying anything. And this is something that Dan does routinely in a lot of his short form content is, and this is why Than brings this up, you got to read Dan's written work. You got to read his paper on the cognitive approach to understanding early Christology, and you have to read his Divine Images book to understand exactly what he's saying there. When he just, and then Chloe, I'll throw this back to you in a second here. When Dan says, this is very important, when Dan says, talking about authorized mediatorial figures that bear names without being divine, and that's the intuitive approach, that's Dan's actual entire methodology and framework. Essentially what he's doing there is he's saying, sure, yeah, Jesus is bearing the divine name, and here we have some prior examples where there are some individuals bearing names, but those individuals bearing names aren't actually divine themselves, and then basically says, so that's exactly what's happening here. Now, the way I just set that up, that sounds like an absolute non sequitur, but this is exactly what Dan is doing, is this is his entire methodology, is he's taking the intuitions, right, what we would otherwise say, system one level thinking of the ancient Israelites. And then he's saying, we're going to take a small sliver of how we understand mediatorial figures to operate. And then we're just going to transpose that into the context of Jesus. And boom, Jesus is automatically on the same plane. There's a lot more work to do. That's incredibly under-justified. And he's going to run with this framework throughout the rest of the video. Here's what I want to first outline that's very, very important. Because this is an explanatory framework that Dan is working with that he doesn't make explicit. That's my main point here, is that he doesn't make it explicit for his audience. His audience thinks Bible scholar, reading verse, exegesis, you're welcome, right? That's not what's happening. And I'm going to read this for you, just a real quick excerpt from something I wrote that's really important. And it goes like this.
Why don't you just put it on screen so people can...
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Thanks for stopping me because I was about to.
While you're pulling that off, I put a sweatshirt on because you guys are.
Are they still going?
They're all talking about my arms, man. We're here to talk about Dan. Where Dan's
right,
gonna watch. Dan's gonna watch this. He's gonna be like, you.
So I got it up right here. Okay, everyone see that?
Yeah. Screw. Close down the all tools thing on the side, and then zoom it a little bit so people can see a little bit better.
How's that look?
There you go.
Okay, so this is what I have here, and we're going to use this as the beginnings of the conversation that we're going to have throughout the rest of the video. He argues that divine conceptualization is best approached through what we call a cognitive and socio-material categories rather than rigid ontological dichotomies imported from later theology or modern scholarship. In his account, deity concepts first circulate at the folk level, remain tethered to intuitive reasoning, and are then elaborated by reflective and institutional processes. So for Dan, divine presence is presenced and reified through authorized media, like he's talking about authorized mediatorial figures, such that the identification and distinction can coexist without conceptual incoherence. Obviously. So on this view, what he's going to do is going to take a wide range of biblical and ancient Jewish phenomena, things from the ark, glory traditions, messenger, name traditions, you name it. And he's going to say that these are best understood within a broader grammar of mediated divine presence. That is what Dan is trying to do right off the bat. So when he says, well, this is in line with the intuitive reasoning of the ancient Israelites, right? All he's doing is saying, this is my personal framework. He's coming off like he's saying something objective.
Yeah.
Like he's ascertaining it straight from the text. Like one day he woke up and went, I'm going to read this Bible. Oh my gosh, divine self-presencing media and authorizable figures. And it's intuitive with the ancient Israel. That's not what happened. Dan is working with a very specific framework that he's not going to justify within the video, but he's going to present as an alternative and then treat us like we're the ones that haven't done our homework. Coley, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like one of the biggest gripes with Dan McClellan, I think, and his content. And then when anyone, puts forth their framework, they're dogmatic, right? Like with their presuppositions, it's not okay. But I was just thinking along the lines of the text itself, right? And when we think about how he's trying to assign this divine agency to Jesus, which in one sense we all agree with, like he's the one mediator between man and God. Like, he is the image of the invisible God. So like, we don't like reject this full idea of divine image bearing. I think the question is, what does it mean? And his go-to is in Exodus. And so there's a little bit that we have to, think about there. And then of course we're dealing with John. Like I just think about the angel of the Lord in Exodus 3, who clearly identifies himself as Yahweh in a very intuitive sense. When you read the text, we're talking about intuition. If you read the text, you would just think it's Yahweh in the burning bush because it is. Like, I don't know how else to read it that way. And then you lead into John in this idea that Jesus is this divine image bearer. And I don't know how Dan would respond to this or what thought that you guys would have on this. But if Jesus is not God, and he's just kind of this icon or this statue, this divine image bearer, why is he then allowed before creation to be a part of making other divine image bearers? Like, there's a clear distinction there between who Jesus is as the Word and who everybody else is. And that's why I think you're doing somewhat of a disservice when you kind of try, like what you're saying, Tim, you just lump him in on the same playing field as the angels and really even the prophets of the Old Testament.
Yep. So just to round it off, thanks, Chloe, for that. Dan's taking this ancient conceptual grammar we find in the Hebrew Bible about divine self-presencing and authorized self-presencing media. And he's saying that all that's happening in John is that conceptual grammar is being inherited. He doesn't think anything special other than that is happening. And what I've argued, and I'm going to argue in this as we continue on in the video, what I'm arguing is that's not false, it's incomplete. And this is the part that Dan, in my 20-second little blurb there, he read a lot into. And so I'm really going to go deep into this, but that Hebrew Bible, ancient conceptual grammar is true, but it's incomplete when we get to the Christological data and those aspects, and you're going to see that as we continue. Than, do you have anything, brother?
No, I'm good. I want to save most of my thoughts on Dan's thesis for when I actually put out when we actually put out a full-fledged response to his book. Also, I do want to talk to him. Like I'm planning on emailing him next week. So that way I can make sure I'm tracking with everything too. So I'll just put the video back up and we'll keep going.
Reference to the divine name is not an identification as God. It is an identification as the possessor of the divine name, because we can go to John 17 and we see Jesus talking about having manifested God's name, which God gave to Jesus.
Dan, no one is disputing that Jesus is bearing the divine name. But if we go to John 17, Dan's only alluding to verse 6. Go one verse back, we see that Jesus claims to have the same glory with the Father. What does Isaiah 42 tell us? That Yahweh shares his glory with no one. A Yahweh exclusive attribute is being given to Jesus. Why on earth would Jesus say he has this unless he's being included in the divine identity?
So I've got two concerns here. To begin, a decade ago, in 2016, I presented a paper at a...
I want for the whole chat to really like lock in and pay attention. This is where I got to Dan pretty hard. That 20-second thing I just did, this is where he goes off. And this is where his replies are really important. So I urge everyone, please pay attention here, because this is the juicy part. And this is where Dan kind of plays his cards that we need to be able to respond. Okay, go ahead. You're good.
Conference at the University of St. Andrews on divine identity Christology. And I was addressing Richard Baucham's theoretical model of Christology, and Richard Baucham was sitting across the table from me at the time. And I explained why Jesus asserting divine prerogatives does not necessarily make Jesus part of...
Very important keyword right there. But I'll keep going. Just
and wait, what word is that?
Necessarily.
Yo, and
That's
I want
a
to
very important keyword.
But
I don't want to spoil it for the audience. I just want you guys to zero in on and keep that word in mind as he keeps talking. Unless you want me to stop there for some reason.
Just real fast, I want to say this, and this is very observant of Dan here, because yes, I am employing Richard Baucham's divine identity framework in my response. So he saw that right away. So that was perfectly fine. What's interesting though is he says that Richard Baucham was sitting across from him as he presented his paper, arguing that divine prerogatives are not necessarily divine identity. But he doesn't include what Baucham's rejoinders were or any potential counter arguments to what he said were. He just kind of said that it happened. And I attempted to reach out to Baucham, and I tried to find all these different emails, and I wasn't able to get him because I wanted to know what the receipts were. I just think it's very interesting that he leaves out the part where Baucham probably, I would say, my priors are very high that Baucham would have said, okay, well, here's my response to that. So just going to put that there.
Yeah.
The divine identity, unless one presupposes certain things about divinity, about agency, and about identity. And the next year I published that paper in a peer-reviewed academic journal called Biblical Interpretation. You can access that paper through my bio. But in all of the videos that I...
Dan, don't use your response videos of our videos to publicize your work, okay? I'm offended by that. How dare you do that? You just stick to our conversation. I'm just kidding. Let's keep going.
I love that.
Have made addressing the question of early Christology, particularly as it is found in the Gospel of John. I have talked about the fact that there are already existing explanations for an entity that is not God exercising divine prerogatives. It goes all the way back to Exodus 23. It's found in multiple places in Greco-Roman period Judaism. It's even found in rabbinic Judaism. I have literally hundreds of videos where I explain that the fact that Jesus is exercising divine prerogatives already has a ready-made explanation available that was actually in circulation in the first century CE. And so we don't have to appeal to this anachronistic notion of divine identity. In other words, I've addressed this claim literally hundreds of times just on my social media channels. And for you to spring that as if this is some novelty that I have not heard before means either one of two things. Either you are just abjectly ignorant of the overwhelming majority of the content that I have created related to early Christology. You just have no idea what my argument is. Or you know what my argument is, you know how I'm going to respond, and you don't care and are just performing for your audience because you know they either won't see it or also won't care because they're deep in their dogmas. as
Okay.
are you. I
Pause
don't know
real
which of those
fast.
two it is.
Fast. One,
So
false
childish, man.
dichotomy, brother. Your argument is based on a fallacy. Two, this is very interesting because, like, here's the third option. Maybe I just am not convinced that his divine presence / divine images model actually defeats what Bauckham is doing. Maybe it's that, but no, that paper did away with what Bauckham was doing. So I want to focus on one thing here. And Than, you noticed this right away. I know that. You don't have to speak. I'm gonna speak for you here. He said anachronism for the audience. Anachronism, being anachronistic, is a fallacy. And it's the charge of anachronism is such that it's when you import a modern usage or meaning of a term or a concept and into a earlier or its original usage and act as though that is the same exact usage or meaning. And so that's what he's saying that we're doing with Baukham's divine identity model here. The issue is he doesn't really provide like a criterion to adjudicate between when something's anachronistic and when something's not. And I want to give a framework real fast as to why I don't think that's happening. Again, according to Dan's model, we have to go with the folk level intuitions of the ancient Israelites when it came to how they understood deity concepts and divine prerogatives and things. And he's going to say that Baukham's divine identity, the model, the idea that the Son and Spirit are included in the divine identity of Yahweh in the New Testament. He's going to say that's anachronistic because that's not going to be the way in which they saw things in the earliest time. So we're going to trace the genealogy. Now, a lot of people think he's committing genetic fallacy by doing this, but actually he's not. He's doing something very specific. What he's doing is he's doing a methodological move. Now, he's not justifying the methodology. So this is a mere stipulation. He's basically programming in it by hand. What he's doing here is he's saying, if we follow the methodology, that you are to be tethered, and in a sense, a prisoner of the earliest ways of thinking about a thing. And you have to be consistent with that, even if you have later theological reflections that even maybe deviate from the conceptual grammar of the earliest traditions. And that could still explain what the earliest traditions were talking about. That's going to be a move that's going to be called automatically into suspect. This is what we call in epistemology explanatory priority. He's giving explanatory priority to the system 1 / folk level intuitions of the ancient Israelites. That's what he is doing here. Now, that needs justification, not mere methodological stipulation. And that's why I'm not convinced by. That's why I still went with Baukham's model. But here's also how we get out of anachronism. Later reflections can actually constitute as higher order evidence, meaning we are not to be cognitive prisoners of how the earliest people thought about a thing. We can actually look at the later reflections and update based on those and actually see that and treat that as higher order evidence. So then when we update our background knowledge, then we're actually able to have a valid way where we're not committing anachronism. None of us are saying that the conceptual grammar is exactly that of the ancient Israelites that we see talked about in the Hebrew Bible here. And I want to read this real fast. This is really important. And I'm actually going to Stan, you mind if I share my screen for this one?
Yeah, do it, bro.
Cool. All right. Okay. So later reflection as higher order evidence. And epistemologist Trent Doherty here, that's where I'm drawing from. Doherty presses the point further. He argues that when one reconsiders a body of first order evidence and one's evaluation changes, the later inclination may itself be evidence. More precisely, it may function as higher order evidence about how the same first order evidence supports the relevant proposition. He writes that the new inclination itself is the token of this new evidence, and that it would be irrational not to update on such testimony, just as it would be irrational not to update on the testimony of peers. And so this matters greatly for our present dispute. If later reflective theological judgment can itself register higher order evidence, then later theological articulation is not automatically epistemically second rate, simply because it is later. It may in some cases constitute the more mature and evidentially responsive account of the data. So we are not a cognitive prisoner of the past. And that line exactly captures what McClellan's methodological move is doing. So I wanted to share that. So the whole anachronism charge, we can escape that automatically. And he committed a false dichotomy. Go ahead.
So real quick, why not just answer this misguided objection to what's happening? Because I'm pretty sure what's happening right now is people who are not familiar with epistemology and the standard diachronic reasoning that's employed in some of these cases. People
In
are
other
not going to
words,
be
we can
familiar
change
with
our
this, right?
Christology to whatever we want, and then we can read the way we act today back into the earliest writings. No, that is a gross straw man, and that is completely in bad faith, and you aren't actually hearing what I'm saying. You're projecting onto what I'm saying, what you want me to say to make my argument easier to respond to. There's no way that you could ascertain that from anything I just read at all. Anywhere. What we're saying is that can. Okay, let's think about words. The word can.
I'm stealing that line. There is no way you could ascertain that from anything I just said.
Let's think about what the word can means, right? Okay, later reflections can constitute higher order evidence such that when we update our background knowledge, that can actually be the more mature and responsive understanding of the data. That's what I'm saying. Not what you're saying. What I just said is so different from when you just said we're practically speaking two different languages. Man, wasting my time.
Jeez, dude.
Come on, Jonathan.
Okay,
No, I'm just kidding.
now here is a much more because Koopa's a cool cat. So why not help Koopa understand what's happening here? Because
Sure, but if Martianism,
on a surface level, this could sound reasonable, but then help unpack this a little bit, Tim.
but is Marcionism evidence for realizing that the God of the Old Testament is evil? Yeah, no, that's not at all what I'm saying. What the reason why this is relevantly different is we're not saying if something is later, therefore it's free game. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is we can look at the concept, we can trace the genealogy of a particular conceptual framework and its conceptual grammar, and we can see how that develops, keeping its core understanding. And then we can evaluate through reflection, here's actually might be the more worked out understanding of what these original people thought. So again, we have to understand that what we're objecting to is what's called a diachronic consistency constraint. Diachronic means through time. Consistency constraint, meaning what we learn in the past, we have to tether ourselves to that, to whatever we learn about in the future. So the underlying principle that's being missed here that I'm going to make articulate is we have to follow the past suppositions of our learning when we're evaluating particular data in a particular domain. This is something that's hotly debated within the epistemology literature. I mean, if you just go into the literature on Bayesian epistemology, there are philosophers like Michael Tittlebaum who defend a notion of this view. And then there are different forms of what we call conditioning that don't operate by those constraints. It's a way of learning. And so if we're going to say that that which is explanatorily prior is going to be our past suppositions of what we've learned, and thus we have to keep in line with that, that principle must be defended. And what Doherty's arguing is that we can question that principle. And there actually have situations where whole rethinks are actually the better, more mature, more evidentially responsive and responsible response to the original data that whatever the genealogy that we're presented with was actually looking at, was actually facing. That's what we're saying.
Yeah. And by the way, for anybody that's like, all this epistemology stuff is like, whoa. This will probably be a good topic for Tim, you and I to do a stream on or a lecture on in general, is Bayesian epistemology. Which it's not going to cover everything, man, but like we can at least get a good start to it, because Tim, you'll probably echo this when I say this, but the overwhelming majority of the disputes that I see within biblical scholarship, and not only the disputes, but also some of the predominant quote unquote consensus views or mainstream views, are all born out of bad methodology and bad epistemology.
Mm-hmm.
And the sooner people can implement, let me put it this way, the sooner biblical scholarship can get out of the 70s and get back and get into the future. The future is now, old man. You know, like get into the future and catch up with what epistemologists are saying now. I think the better. So, but I don't know if you would echo that. But
100%. Okay, so here's actually, I had a conversation. Shout out, by the way, David Paulman from, I just throw out a random name. It's like I'm speaking in tongues. David Paulman. Okay, David Paulman, friend of Than and I. Mm-hmm. Coley, I don't think you know David Paulman yet. Cool to get you guys connected. But anyway, David Paulman's lit. He's debating somebody right now on the soul. Does the soul exist? Anyway, he actually said this to me today. I'm giving him full credit for this. He pointed out something really interesting. He said, just as there was a shift from just theology or systematic theology to analytic theology, he says he hopes that we start to see analytic biblical studies, where the door opens up for a field of analytic biblical studies where we can actually import some of these frameworks. So Than, that made me think of that. And I'm like, dude, I love that. I would love to see that shift happen.
It's good stuff.
I'll tease this. There is a biblical scholar who I'm actually planning on writing a paper with on this very topic.
No way.
Yeah.
You're not, bro.
I'm just gonna leave it there for now, though. That's all.
You can't just tease. You can't just do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it Dan McClellan?
Oh.
Here for the vibes, baby. Let's go.
All right. Lock in, everybody. Chat,
Honestly,
you need to
I would be more if Dan and I found something that we agreed upon that we wanted to publish together, and I would publish with him. But he probably wouldn't want to publish with me because I'm a dirty apologist with that is a man. I'm a Eurocentric straight male or something, whatever he wants to say. So anyway, let's keep going.
But whichever it is, there's an explanation for what's going on here. You've not arrived at any kind of special insight or any kind of conclusion that has not already been adequately addressed for years in peer-reviewed scholarship. Second thing, this is not an Adonai-only divine prerogative, and you just have to read a few verses down in the very same chapter to discover that. Because what's going on in John chapter?
I've got a real problem with what he's about to do to this text. This is like, bro, you can't be a scholar and do this. I thought this was it's just dishonest, I think. And so I don't know. I couldn't believe that this is where he was willing to go with this, but okay, I'm done.
All right, okay.
Chapter 17. Well, on 3 different occasions, Jesus prays that his disciples may become one with him in the exact same way that he is one with God. And if we go down to verse 21, we see the end of a sentence that begins in verse 20, that they may all be one. As you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. So in John 10:30, when Jesus says, I and the Father are one, this is explained as a mutual indwelling. And that mutual indwelling is going to be extended to Jesus's disciples, according to Jesus's wishes in John chapter 17. Verse 22, the glory that you have given me, I have given them, so that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, that they may become completely one, so that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them, even as you have loved me. So the glory that Jesus has, that is God's, that God says God will not share with anyone, has been shared with Jesus, has been given to Jesus. And lest you argue, well, that giving is just part of this eternal giving where there was never
This part
right here is insane.
This part killed me, dude.
ever a time when there was not a giving. If you want to appeal to that philosophical mumbo jumbo, fine. But Jesus then passes it on to his disciples. So even if you think that Isaiah 42 is not contradicted by Jesus saying, the Father gave me his glory, it certainly is contradicted by Jesus passing that glory on to his followers. So, in other words, the divine prerogatives that you are insisting indicate Jesus is part of the divine identity are being shared with Jesus's disciples throughout the Gospel of John. We have the oneness, we have the glory. Jesus's soteriology in the Gospel of John is a divinization soteriology, where Jesus's followers are going to become divine as well, just as Jesus is divine. You're not reading the Gospel of John on its own terms. You are imposing terms upon the Gospel of John. You're saying this is what you are and are not allowed to say. And you are telling
them real fast.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so I mean, I can throw the same charge at him, right? I can
I'm making everybody look at you.
All right. What's up, y'all?
I'm just kidding.
I can make the same charge to him. I can say that you are not reading the Gospel of John, but you are imposing your terms and conditions. The reason why he thinks what he's doing is valid is because he already is convinced that his explanatory priority strategy of the system one folk level intuitions of the ancient Israelites is in place. And that's why he's able to approach the text that way. But why can't I methodologically stipulate in the same manner and come to the opposite conclusion that this is the divine identity? That's the first thing I wanted to say. Second thing is philosophical mumbo jumbo is not an argument.
Yeah. I mean, that actually very neatly connects to what I was yapping about biblical studies being philosophically inept half the time. If your response to exegeting the text in light of some philosophical considerations is, well, that's philosophical mumbo jumbo, we got a serious problem. Because how are you going to interpret works like Philo, for instance, independent of some metaphysics, when Philo himself is like a middle Platonic Jew? You need the metaphysics to understand certain texts. Philo is a very non-controversial example. So why is it that we can't have this philosophical mumbo jumbo when we're reading the Gospel of John, for instance? Now, sure, the author of John might not have been a philosopher, but that does not mean or preclude one from including the cognitive environment that they're in that could include philosophy into the text. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and Coley, go ahead. I want to actually hear your...
I just wanted to hit on the utter botchery of John 17 and to try to equate the glory that's given to the disciples in the oneness and say that they're on the same level as this unique Son of God like who's the word before all of creation. Like within the context of John, the whole point is about who Jesus is. Like he is the Son of God, this pre-existent one. Like even if I didn't want to like claim deity, regardless, he's still unique and distinct. And even within the opening of John 17, in who Jesus is presented to be, that he's the one who gives eternal life, who has authority over all flesh, who's literally equal with God in John 17:3, and talks about sharing the glory that he had with him from all of eternity before the world existed. And to try to equate that to the disciples, it's uncharitable, it's terrible exegesis. I think we got to look into, okay, what does it mean that the disciples he wants them to be one with God? What does it mean that he wants them to share the glory? Like there's like this invitation of the Trinity of us to be in union with him. Absolutely. But to try to equate the disciples to Jesus in John 17, and I've seen other people do it before, I just think it's just bad theology.
I love everything you're saying, Coley, and it's interesting because at the end there, tail end there, he talks about the charge of a contradiction. Now, the moment that we get in the contradiction territory, we're no longer exegeting. We're talking purely if two propositions are going to entail some kind of denial or violation of the laws of logic. So now we're just purely in logical territory. But people always get what a contradiction is wrong. And some say that a contradiction is a proposition and it's a negation, but more strictly, it is a proposition or two propositions true at the same time in the same respect. And what we're disputing here is ultimately that it's in the same respect. What Dan is arguing is that the pre-existent glory of Christ is the exact same respect by which we have that glory. And what we're saying is, well, we can ascertain very swiftly that there are two different respects here. There is the glory that Christ has with the Father with respect to the divine identity, and in the glory that he wants his disciples to have with respect to that that invitation to participate in unity and all those different things, in salvation, all those different things. So we have two different respects. And I think it's very simple to see. It's like in this particular scenario, that kind of giving that he says that we attach philosophical mumbo jumbo to is a giving that existed before the world was. So that Christ had. That's very interesting. And so to me, it just seems obvious right off the bat that that's a completely wholly distinct respect than what he's talking about with the disciples.
Right.
Cooper just had a quick question again. So Than's question about philosophy, maybe the difference is whether it is actually present in the text or not, and what you're arguing. If you're saying the author of John thought in this way, then appealing to later philosophical ideas is more likely to be inaccurate or anachronistic. That doesn't follow. So there's a few things going on here. One, because this isn't like a binary thing, mind you. There's no this philosophical system was here at this point and it wasn't at this point. That's not how philosophical ideas work, and that's not how a lot of these, even some of the intuitions people will have work. So think about it this way. For instance, say you had and Tim, you've heard me give this example before.
Yeah, I like this one.
Say you had a church plant in South Africa, and these people are philosophically not learned at all. It's a third world village that they live in or something like that. And all they really know is some basic conciliar statements in what the gospel is, right? And the conciliar statements that they know are that there is one God, but there are three persons that they all worship as God: the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. But if you were to ask them anything about, if you were to ask them any philosophical statements, or maybe if you were to ask them anything about the Nicene statements, right? They wouldn't be able to tell you anything, right? But then suppose we come in and we teach them some philosophy and they go, yeah, that's what we've been thinking. We just didn't really have the tools to articulate them. Well, the charge of anachronism there would lead you to rejecting the conclusion that they were always Trinitarians in the same sense that we are, even though it was true that they are. They just didn't have the tools to explicate these things or model them out in their head or in their higher order frame of thinking. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things to consider here, because reshaping the cognitive environment of how people
It's a good point.
engaged with their theology is explicitly a different question than the metaphysical modeling of what they believed. That's a huge, very important distinction, and one that I will be going into in much greater detail when I respond to Dan's book in much more nuance. Anything else you guys want to add in?
No.
Okay.
Not
I'm going to pause this here for just a second so we can do some super chats. Otherwise, they're going to get piled up and then I'm going to get stressed out. So
Let's do it.
Biblical armor, bark, bark, puppies unite. Yes, here at Inspiring Philosophy Academy, the pups can be fully unleashed without Mike getting mad at us. So, yes. If the person of the Son has one divine nature, so one divine mind, and one human nature, one human mind, so what exactly is the person that has the two minds? It's the logos. The logos is the subject. The confusion, if I'm reading your super chat correctly here, the confusion here is the equivocation between mind and subject. Those are two different things. A mind is a set of powers and capacities that a subject might have given a particular nature it has, right? But the subject is not equivalent to the mind. Tim?
Yeah, no, I was just going to object. It says, if the person of the Son has one divine nature, so one divine mind, already, that's everything hangs on that conditional. I reject the conditional for everything that Fan just said. So everything needs to be, like, why are we assuming? I mean, maybe he's just stipulating, like, are we just stipulating that one divine nature entails one divine mind? If so, why? That's a very specific metaphysical model, a very specific philosophy of mind strategy.
Yeah. So this is a good way to answer because I didn't answer the final part of the question. So what exactly is the person? Well, a person, or AKA a subject in the philosophical literature, is just a first person experience. Yep. That is it. The mind is a set of powers and capacities that the subject has in virtue of a nature, right? So a subject can have two minds without being two persons. Now, there's more nuance there, obviously, but that's the super chat answer.
And this is what I wish that God logic would have been able to whip out in part of the cross exam with Jacob Hansen at Bless God.
Oh yeah.
Because Hansen asked him the same question, and I think Avery said that he was agnostic or something on the answer here. It would have been cool if he would have been able to pull this out, because he knew he knew that there wasn't a problem, but he just couldn't explain it. So good job there.
Yeah. Next super chat. I love this channel and that sweet Greek man. Sorry, I was just answering one thing in the chat. All right, let's keep moving on. Bark, bark. God bless everyone and happy Easter. Thank you, brother. Mormon. I'm assuming this is Mormonism.
Moronism.
Not moronism.
Moronism?
Yo, I'm going to start saying that, bro. Hey,
Stop,
you start from moronism, bro.
Stop. My goodness. The typo started a meme. When are we getting Than plus Wes buff workout stream? Man, I'll do that if Wes Huff wants to do that with me. I would love to do that with Wes, but I don't know if he wants to do that with me. Wes Huff, where you at? Who's the guy in the red hat? He's kind of hot. I don't see a guy in the red hat here. This is pink, so it's not me. Got you, man. Those thirsty Muslims ruining the stream.
What?
In the beginning, when people were like talking about my arms and stuff, so I put a sweatshirt on. Does Dan reject non-gospel texts from the first centuries, i.e., Paul and the Apostolic Fathers? I haven't seen too much from him on this topic. That might be a good question to ask him and see.
I mean,
what he
probably
says.
because when you get into Paul, it really starts to fall apart. It's easy to debate narratives, but when you start getting real doctrine, like it's way tougher.
Mhm.
It's easy, like it's just the fact of it. It's easy to debate narratives, but then when Paul is like making the Shema and including Jesus in it, like
OW.
so yeah, well, I wonder what they thought about Jesus.
Big W. Streaming on epistemology would be great. Do you have any book recommendations for a novice on this topic? A novice.
That's me.
Get any book recommendations for epistemology?
Yeah, for a
What was that
novice.
Yeah, I think that controversial opinion, but I think that any rudimentary textbook-ish intro to epistemology will suffice. It really depends on your purposes. Like, epistemology is a big field. Like, what are you trying to grasp right now? Are you trying to grasp what evidence is, what it means to explain something, what a belief is, what it means to justify a belief? Are you wanting to know, like, what are the different accounts of knowledge? What is perception? How we understand things through language. Like, there's so many different avenues that you can go down when it comes to epistemology. That's why I think that just getting the lay of the land in any intro book could help. But Michael Huemer, though, I think Michael Huemer is a pretty accessible writer. So anything he's done on general epistemology, I would read.
Can we address that? Well, you're going through there's a comment that came up that I thought was interesting.
Which one?
All right, Koopa.
The Paula Fredrickson thing?
Yeah, right. So essentially saying that in 1 Corinthians 8:6 that he's not including Jesus in the divine identity, but updating it to include the chief viceroy of God. Okay. I just think like take a first century Jew and rework the Shema and put someone else in it and ask them what is the most, you're talking about like intuitive. What is the most like reasonable reading of the text? Like, and then I could just go, well, N.T. Wright thinks that it is. Like that's the thing with scholarship. It's like eventually, like I've got to look in land and go, what do I think is most reasonable here? What do I think this is most likely communicating?
Yeah.
Like
the other thing is that I'll just kind of add in here is chief viceroy of God is not a mutually exclusive hypothesis.
Exactly.
In divine identity Christology.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
I actually agree that Jesus is the chief viceroy of God.
Yeah, he's the new Adam. Like, yeah.
But I don't think that means that he's not.
See what Paul.
I
I want to add this in, Koopa. What Paula Fredrickson is doing is she is including an unspoken plus sign right next to chief viceroy of God, and then after the plus sign, she's saying nothing else. So her position is that Jesus is the chief viceroy of God and nothing else.
Yeah.
That makes very specific predictions that 1 Corinthians 8:6 is not made very probable by. That's my whole thing. I mean, I've gone on rants about this. Like, what do these hypotheses actually predict at all? I don't know. I know what the divine identity theory predicts.
Well, okay, so this is where we go back full circle to the problem of the methodology and the epistemology of New Testament studies and biblical studies in general, right? Because you're exactly right. What is actually happening here, and I'm going to bring back how I highlighted Dan's very key word in his initial rant, which was none of these texts necessitate divine identity Christology, right? But it is a very uninteresting claim, right? To go, hey, you have this theory over here, but the data doesn't force this conclusion. Here's another theory, right? There's two problems with this. One, that's a very uninteresting claim, right? We care about what claims, what hypotheses, or what theoretical reconstructions are most probable according to the data. And we also care about whether or not these theories are mutually exclusive to other theories. And I'm of the opinion that Fredrickson's theory and even McClellan's theory is not inherently mutually exclusive to divine identity Christology. So I'll stop my rant there for a second. If anybody else wants to jump in.
I just want to simply say 2 chapters later, Paul is very clear that Jesus is the God of the Old Testament in 1 Corinthians 10:9. Like I just, like you just can't really escape it. And I just like, here's my thing. And this is just who I am. I don't, which I would say that like the earliest manuscript of that is that it's Christ. But anyways, like I respect that people put a lot of study into a lot of things, particularly biblical scholars. It just doesn't mean that they're right. Like that's why we're willing to look at Dan McClellan, who's putting a lot of work in his divine image, theory. Try to say Jesus isn't God; he's just a divine image bearer. Doesn't matter. You just look at him and go, "It doesn't hold up, fam." And this is why we think that.
All right, we got one more super chat, and then we'll get going. I didn't even read it at a time. I know Tim's not looking at the screen right now because he'd be laughing.
Wait, sorry. Sorry, Lucy.
The last super chat before we move on. Do you want to read that for us, Tim?
There's a Grecian hammer on my monitor.
All right, we're gonna move on. I'm just gonna make Tim think about that.
I don't get it.
The Gospel of John, what it is and is not allowed to say, precisely so that it can be leveraged as authorization for your Trinitarian dogmas that didn't exist when the Gospel of John was written, dogmas that would not be developed for centuries after the Gospel of John had been written. This is not new. This is stuff that I have been addressing not only hundreds of times on my social media channels, but also in peer-reviewed scholarship.
And we have in the Hebrew Bible already a divine mediator who is able to do what only God is supposed to be able to do, precisely because the divine name is in him. And that's the messenger of Adonai, as we see in Exodus 23, 20 to 22. So we don't even have to go outside the Hebrew Bible to understand what's going on with Jesus invoking the divine name.
The problem here is that Dan has already told us in multiple videos that we shouldn't appeal to univocality in the Bible, and yet he wants to use Exodus to try to justify his position on Jesus and John.
So this is not univocality. I am not suggesting that the author of Exodus and the author of the Gospel of John mean the exact same thing. I'm pointing out that Exodus 23 is a tradition that was in circulation and was being adopted and adapted and altered by later generations, which is why you have angels like Yahoel who are citing Exodus 23, which is clearly not what Exodus 23 was talking about. This is why you have Ravi Dietz later on in rabbinic literature quoting Exodus 23 when talking about Metatron. That is also not what Exodus 23 is talking about. So this is just an attempt to say, I'm rubber, you're glue, and try to turn back on me a criticism that I have leveled against apologists without actually understanding the criticism and without applying it accurately.
He just does that. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, he does. He holds a double standard. He assumes that other people, he's done it to me where he's assumed that I was speaking with the intention of univocality when I wasn't. And so that's exactly right. It's just a rhetorical jab back at him because we should we should not assume like immediately that that's what's going on, right? And so I thought that was I don't know, I just thought that was so interesting. Like, obviously people are trying to make real claims and look at the scripture, and we shouldn't assume univocality, that they're assuming that, which he does all the time.
To my own argument, because what I'm doing is not in any way, shape, or form whatsoever an appeal to univocality. I'm insisting the author of the Gospel of John is actually altering what's going on in Exodus 23. They don't mean the same thing. It's not univocality. I'm just pointing out that Exodus 23 is part of the tradition that the author of the Gospel of John knows about and is using, and knows their audience knows about as well. This is so laughably not complex. And yet in your just attempt to try to find some kind of rhetorical deflection or rhetorical snare, you so wildly misunderstand and misrepresent not only my criticisms of you, but my argument about early Christology. This is ridiculous.
Damn. He really tried to. I don't know, maybe it's the power structures, dude.
Yeah, I mean, look, so the irony that's lost on me, the irony that I think is lost on Dan here is that well, I don't watch his TikToks when he's responding to like random Christians or whatever, right? But like when he responds to Mike and to other like well-researched people, and when he's responded to even some scholars and accused them of univocality, they are doing the thing that Dan says he's doing, which is,
right,
hey, here's a tradition. This tradition can explain some of this data we're seeing over here. They might be using this tradition. Let's reconstruct the model, a theoretical model based off of these traditions. I think Dan has missed the rhetorical like move there. Like, yes, it's I don't know, I can't speak for you guys, right? But the way I interpreted you guys there was, okay, cool. They're just doing a rhetorical thing to kind of be like, look, Dan, you say this all the time. You're doing it now. But like, that's not the crux of your argument. That's not how it comes off, right? It's just a little cherry on top that you guys are adding in anticipation of the univocality, objection that he would normally throw at you, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong or am I right?
No, it's a total anticipatory move. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 100%. And he just kind of, I don't know, he got a little mini crash out there on it.
Yeah. I mean, I'd crash out too if I was getting cooked by this guy. Look how beautiful he is, and look at that jawline, dude.
The sun is shining so good right there, Coley, dude.
And we should be asking is, how does John present Jesus?
That is precisely what I am addressing in this video.
And he is explicitly clear in John 1:1, in John 1:18, in John 20:28 that Jesus is God.
And the video you're responding to is one in a 4-part series where I talk about how in John 1:1, in John 8:58, in John 10:30, and in John 20:28, the author of the Gospel of John is not presenting Jesus as God. Now, the only verse that you brought up that I have not addressed in that series is John 1:18, where we've got a text critical issue. Is John 1:18 originally referring to Jesus as the unique or the only God, or the unique or the only Son? And that is a text critical issue that we don't have the real estate to get into in this particular response. But you don't really have a strong case to make that the author actually wrote that Jesus was the unique God. And there are a number of reasons for that. And I'll make another video addressing John 1:18. But you're responding to one video in a 4-part series, and you're bringing up the other passages that I address in the other parts of that 4-part series, where I explain in detail why John 1:1 and John 20:28 don't actually identify Jesus as God. And you can go look at my book, The Bible Says So, the chapter.
Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah.
Is the rest of this video just a rant?
Yeah, 100%.
Dan,
I told you she doesn't like me.
I'm torn here, okay? Because like on one side of the coin, I sympathize and empathize with his frustrations a little bit, right? Like in one sense, it's like, yeah, it's really frustrating when somebody's trying to take you down, and it's like they're not really addressing everything you have to say. Blah blah. Like I'm with you, Dan, there, right? Especially in an academic context. But that goes to the other side of the coin, which is, Dan, it's a TikTok video. Like, tell me if I'm wrong, Tim and Coley. You guys were at the Blessed God Summit. You saw this video from Dan, and you probably impromptu were like, "Yo, bro, we should just like respond to this. Like,
That's
we're together.
literally-
literally
We're together.
what
Like,
it
we could do a
sounded like.
cold app video. That'd be pretty cool." So you did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
It's even worse than that. It's
So
even
it's
worse
just
than
like
that. Coley
I
was
I
literally
empathize with Dan, but at
rolling.
the same time, it's like, dude, chill. This isn't academia. Like, I it's fine.
Yeah,
That's
but
why Dan, I'm reading the whole entire book and engaging with all the scholarship, and I will be making a response.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you are willing to have a private conversation with me, so I can make sure I'm not missing anything when that time
Yeah.
comes.
That being said, like, I know that he made the series. That's why I mentioned all of them, because I'm in disagreement with his conclusion on all of the verses. So I don't have a problem saying that Jesus, and you guys would probably agree with me, that Jesus is being depicted as God in John 1:1, in John 20:28, right? And it's like it's a short video. So yeah, I don't have the time to go through all these videos. And like I don't care that much about breaking down all of like Dan's videos, right? And why I disagree with what he believes on John 1:1. I would argue the reason why he skipped John 1:18 is because it's actually the most explicit in the book of John, saying of Jesus being God. There's not a confusion there. Jesus is presented as the only God in John 1:18. And that's why he skipped it, because it actually takes a lot more to try to refute. Right. And or maybe if I give him charitably, I don't know. I think that's why I skipped it. Like that's how I could come up with like, and so we're looking at John 8:58, right? That's what this whole video is about. Is Jesus God in John 8:58? And we are coming from the position that he is, and are simply presenting in a 3-minute video counterpoints to why he's saying that Jesus is not God in John 8:58. And there at the end, yeah, I just threw in a little retort about univocality.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, is the rest of this, does he make more points, or is he just kind of more rant?
Well, let's just keep going,
Okay, go ahead.
because why not?
That-
Besides, I really like the crash out at the end.
That addresses the claim that the Bible says Jesus is God, for an in-depth discussion of all of these passages and how, no, they don't identify Jesus as God. How the author of the Gospel of John, if they are allowed to operate on their own terms, is not saying that. You have to, again, presuppose a bunch of dogmas and impose a bunch of unifying frameworks on the text to make it say what you determine it is allowed to say. Between the two of us, well, between the three of us, the only one actually concerned for allowing the author of the Gospel of John to operate on their own terms is me.
That's
As
just
Jesus
objectively not true.
is not God.
That's just not true, right? That's just an assertion based on his own, whatever, like that. Like, Tim, do you agree with that?
Yeah,
Like-
no, I don't. And if you
Right.
guys go and read earlier blog posts that Dan wrote, I think he wrote one in 2017 or 2015, where he's critiquing Richard Bauckham's model, the one that I'm endorsing in the video, where he specifically says that Bauckham is, quote, retrojecting
Mm-hmm.
Nicene orthodoxy into the text. That's what Dan means when he says we're not allowing the text to speak for itself. rather than the more sophisticated move that I presented earlier, where later theological reflections can serve as higher order evidence and the more mature evaluation of what the folk intuition and cognition of the earliest peoples circulating these concepts thought, such that I can in a valid way reject these consistency constraints, and thus I'm not a cognitive prisoner of the past in doing so. And so what we're doing is we're just rejecting the explanatory priority mark that Dan is trying to stamp onto the scriptures. That's what we're doing. So no one is in a more less suspicious position given that procedure. Now, obviously, that's not being interacted with because I never said anything close to that. But the more sophisticated model that we're going with, right, is completely allowed. And that's exactly what we think. And I love this because as the video continues on, I'm going to go deeper into what I think Dan's model is doing and how it interacts with Bauckham and Richard Bauckham and Chris Tilling's model. So that's going to be really, really fun. But
can I point out a couple of comments? I thought Garb pointed out two things. He mentioned that John 1:18, kind of what I was saying, it says is just son and not God. The textual evidence is much stronger for the God reading, right? So he's just pointing that out. And then he says something that I think is like, that I think Dan has done such a good job of building his audience that people really start to kind of take his authority on it. But another thing Garb said, who I just think is like, just like he's saying, everyone needs to be aware. It says, it's recognized by even non-Christian scholars that Jesus is presented as God in the Gospel of John. The idea that this position is simply dogma is laughable, right? And so that's what's like really interesting to me about Dan's content, of like, he's presenting it in a way that like he's got it all figured out, and everybody else, like, no, they don't understand, who Jesus really is in John. And so then when we come along and go, no, there are some verses in John that are claiming that Jesus is God, we're depicted as we don't know what we're talking about. And I just think it's good content, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think it's valid.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems, but let's keep going, and then we'll let's keep going.
Wait, are you watching it then? We can't see it.
Oh, whoops. I'm stupid.
I could see it in his eyes. I was like, he's watching it.
Because Jesus is not God in the Gospel of John.
No, Jesus clearly is God in the Gospel of John. It's only Dan's presupposition that leads him to a false conclusion.
You have not identified any presupposition. You have only asserted evidence while not addressing my concerns with the appeal to those passages as evidence, and asserted that I am presupposing univocality, even though that's an absolutely laughable claim. Y'all demonstrated you do not understand my argument. You haven't adequately exposed yourself to my argument. You don't really care what my...
This is the crash out that
This is the
I
crash
really,
out, yeah.
really like.
Yeah.
But I am. This is what, okay. There's some irony here again, because you guys are doing the same thing that Dan does in his videos.
I know.
In other words,
And he doesn't
right?
like it.
In other words, Tim and Coley, you guys understand, it seems, McClellan's divine image thesis. You understand his use of the cognitive science. You understand all of these things. There might be some missing puzzle pieces, maybe, because it's his theory, not yours, right? So obviously there's going to be nooks and crannies of the thesis that you might not comprehend or know about or understand as deeply or intimately as he does.
Right.
That is not an indictment on you. That's just what happens when you have a theory that you've developed, right? Like, not everybody knows my theodicy very well, and anybody who tries to interact it, right? I'm not going to be like, yeah, but you don't know this, like, this tiny little nuance point that I have here that I've never actually written about. How dare you? Like, I'm not going to do that, right? So nonetheless, you guys know this, but for the purpose, I'll use Dan's language from the video that he uses later on in this video. You guys, for the purpose of not having the real estate to dig into it in a TikTok video, right? Arranged your TikTok video in a very particular way. And then Dan decides to go on this following rant here. I'm going to keep it going. I'm going to press play unless you guys want to say something.
I do want to say something.
Okay.
Thank you for reminding me of that last part, Than. I totally forgot to say this. Coley, I can't believe we didn't say this. Coley and I were being kind and generous. What I mean is we looked into our hearts and we said, how can both our audiences at all levels of understanding be edified by this response? That's what we were thinking. We were like, we don't want to alienate large swaths of our audience by getting into this extremely niche that 0.00001% of the population of people actually know. That's what we were doing. We were just trying to respect our audience and apparently get penalized for it. And that's all I wanted to say.
I feel good about it.
All right, so here comes the Mick crash out.
My argument is all you're doing is trying to perform confidence, conviction, and competence to an audience you know just needs to be convinced that they're okay believing in these dogmas.
Dan, do you also have a PhD in cognitive behavioral therapy? Because man, I feel like you're doing a really good job right now.
And so if they can see somebody out there who seems to be speaking with confidence about why the best conclusion is that dogma.
You mean like the skeptics that follow you and then come into other Christians' live streams and say that you're cooking us?
Dogma, then that will make them feel better about accepting that dogma in light of the
your dogma
criticisms that have been leveled against it. You can't adequately engage the criticisms. You don't have the skills or the expertise or the resources necessary to.
Okay, so please explain how you please explain why you accept diachronic.
You don't have skills or resources.
Yeah. Like, oh, look, there's actually somebody in here doing exactly what there's actually somebody in here doing exactly what I said. Wait, that's not what it.
Yep, I know. I've been seeing that guy.
Stan, you are performing confidence and expertise in these areas because you want your audience to feel like it is okay for them to believe in their dogma about how Christianity is false and the gospel is not reliable, that Jesus is not God, and that the power structures that are enforced from Trinitarian Christians need to be taken down. You are just performing. So people like Malcolm Flex 3287
Good profile
can
pic.
come over here and do what they always do without actually engaging in the scholarships themselves or understanding these nuanced details that people like us would try to exchange. No, you're just more interested in performing.
Wait, pull up Garb's last
Adequate.
comment real fast.
Which one?
His most recent comment.
Whose most recent comment?
Garb's.
Where is it?
620.
Is he going to do?
Because you said the cognitive behavioral therapy. I just thought that was perfect.
That's good.
That is funny.
Hey, and Malcolm, we're not victims, man. We made a video. He has the right to respond, and then we're just responding again.
Oh no, I'm a victim, dude. Dan's mad at me for being a man.
Engage my criticisms, which is why you have to pick it apart and piecemeal engage one part of the argument while ignoring other parts of the argument, because you're going to appeal to assertions that are problematized by other parts of the argument as leverage for your argument. You don't have the foggiest idea what you're talking about, and you cannot competently engage the scholarship here. And the fit for this video has been Spider Punk.
Okay.
Cool.
That's not a fit. That's a shirt.
Okay. I'm not gonna.
No, that was Coley's point. Coley, I took that from you, bro.
I shared that in
Coley
private.
ranted about that to me when we were walking back to our hotel room. He's like,
I'm not gonna say it on air.
Not the fit, bro. Okay.
I don't. Dan's an older guy though, so like it's not a big. Like I expect him to do that. It's no big deal. Just
Okay,
funny.
so I want to do this real fast because there's actually a lot of comments that I can basically kill with one stone with what we're talking about and kind of Dan's comments here. Dan mentioned that we don't have the skills or resources to competently engage. We don't kind of understand what he's saying. And I'll just go ahead and I'll show exactly. I have the views outlined. It's very simple. I'm going to share my Skrill. All right.
Skrill.
That's what the kids be saying these days. All right. So here's what McClellan's saying. It's all right here. Right. I'll even highlight it. One. These are the commitments. Deity concepts arise from intuitions about unseen agency and circulate first at the folk level. Then this is the cognitive psychology approach that he is using. And the cognitive psychology framework is taking explanatory priority over later theological reflections. Dan, I get it. That's what you're doing here. 2, divine presence is mediated and reified through differentiated authorized media. 3, this broader grammar explains why agents or objects can be identified with a deity while still distinguished from that deity. And then 4, early Christian language about Jesus should therefore be interpreted within this broader mediational grammar rather than through later ontological binaries. This is a jab at Bauckham. So what I went ahead and did, right, is I took the best of Bauckham and Chris Tilling's model, the one that he is opposing here, and I combined it together where actually it goes with everything we were just saying, that delegated agency, mediation, authorized name patterns, etc., and so forth aren't actually contradicting what we're saying. It's actually something different. And thus we have what's called the divine presence identity theory. It's a combination of the best of Chris Tilling and Bauckham and retaining the advantage of the unificatory scope of McClellan's theory. And this is what it is. This is very simple, guys. Israel's God, I'll actually highlight this as well because I think that's important. Israel's God characteristically makes himself present through differentiated and authorized loci, there you go, Than, of divine self-presencing.
For context to anybody curious, Tim and I were on the phone and he mispronounced the word and I gave him a bunch of crap for it.
We didn't, dude, yeah, we're not enough of that. All right, 2. This broader grammar explains a wide range of Hebrew Bible and early Jewish phenomena. We're on Dan's side here with that. 3, early Christians inherit this grammar. They absolutely do. Paul, Second Temple Jew, obviously inherits this grammar in all his writings. 4, this is the interesting part. Yet the New Testament's strongest Christological data exceed ordinary mediation or delegated agency, which is the contention that Dan is raising. He's saying, okay, well, we can just inherit this broader grammar, and it's just Christ is just an ordinary mediatorial figure that never reaches the threshold of divinity. So this is exactly what this model is doing, is it's saying this. Jesus is therefore best understood as the climactic and unique personal inclusion within the divine identity through and as the unsurpassable embodiment of divine self-presencing. So what does it say here? It says, this model is deliberately hierarchical. It does not reduce identity to presence or presence to identity. It claims rather that presence is the wider grammar and identity inclusion, the Christological intensification within that grammar. Now, I do a whole abductive analysis on this whole thing here, but basically what we're saying here is that this is not contradicting, this is not competing. All we're saying is that it's hierarchical. We take Dan's framework for understanding the Hebrew Bible and ark, glory, concepts, things like that, divine self-presencing, grammar and concepts, but when they're applied to Christ, they're intensified in an unordinary manner where Christ actually ends up being included within the divine identity. So we're using the very foundation and raw materials that Dan is giving us in order to build a divine identity theory. That's what we're doing. So Dan, I get it, man. I get what you're doing, bro. But we don't have to, it doesn't have to contradict. The conclusion isn't that he's just a mere delegated agent. And by the way, what would it look like? I want to ask these individuals who kind of hold to these views, and Than, tell me if you kind of see what I'm saying here, is what would it look like for mediation? Like, what would the text have to say? Like, what would the shape of the text look like if you had mediation, but that mediation was also divine identity? Like, what would that look like?
This is one of the I don't want to let it slip too much, actually. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
I'm in the background pulling web stuff again.
No, you and I have talked about this, right? It's just about it's about the problems with certain theories in biblical scholarship in the underdeterminate force of predictions that these theories make, right? In other words, let's put it this way. I think that the predictions between divine identity, Christology, and mere Dan's thesis, right? The data actually would look pretty similar on both theories, right? Divine identity, Christology predicts the data, and Dan's thesis predicts the data. So now we kind of have an epistemic asymmetry problem, but I don't know if you want to get into this right now or not.
Your face looks funny. I'm sorry.
Why?
Because I see you deliberating. You're like this is the
yeah. But I'm like, I don't know if I want to reveal it. I don't know if I want to reveal all this right now. You know what I'm saying?
So here's what I want to say.
Okay.
Keep saying right there. I'll give you. Oh, Coley, go ahead.
No, you finished, because I got a thought about a comment that I just saw, because it's actually one of my main problems with what he says.
Yeah. So Than, what Than is saying, everybody, is that both views look almost indiscernible from one another when we look at the text. And so what do you do?
But they're creating different conclusions, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what's interesting. And this is why somebody asked, is Dan's hypothesis unfalsifiable? And as far as I understand it, I think it is. I think it's and I don't mean this disrespectfully, I think this is a very well thought out version of the Muslims' version of Jesus only appearing to be crucified. That's what this is. It's just he has the divine prerogative. He has the divine name, and therefore he can claim the name of God, and he can do all the things that God does, and yet he's not God. And so how can I present any evidence to the counter? What can I then therefore say to go, look here, this is how he actually is God, without the response just being, no, you don't understand. He's just God's divine image bearer. He's not actually God himself.
So basically it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, but is not a duck.
Yeah. And that's what I come across with Muslims all the time. That's what I get with Muslims all the time. And I have a hard time going, how is this? Can y'all think of a way it's falsifiable? I'm not saying that, but I'm questioning, like, does he even have a falsifiable claim?
Yeah, I mean, so Koopa asked a question really quickly, and I think this is part of the problem here. Because he says explicit equality with the Father is one thing that doesn't seem to be there, and that's something that you would expect on the mediator but fully divine hypothesis. And I'm going to push back and go, why? Like, Dan's whole point, right, is, well, we shouldn't be trying to do philosophy and with blah, 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 all this other stuff, right? But now why are we trying to generate philosophical expectations, right? Because remember, within within conciliar Christian Orthodox statements, we are not ontological subordinationist, but we do see subordination from the Son to the Father, functionally speaking.
Right.
So we should expect to see a functional subordination within the text, but not an ontological subordination.
Yeah, you don't get ontological subordination. And I want
so in other words, this is a perfect fit.
I would just say Philippians 2 punches this in the face. Like, obviously, we still recognize some sort of subordination, but although who was in the form of God did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, right? Which is concluding that he had equality with God, and then the conclusion of it is that he has the name bestowed upon him that is above all names, in reference to Isaiah, right? Like he is the one who every knee, like he is the God of Isaiah, who every knee will bow before God or before him and confess that he's Lord. Like, but we're mainly dealing with John here, but like one of my problems with it too is, if we kind of go with the scholarship, like the epistles in the Christology there is earlier dating than the Gospels, and like Philippians 2 is one of the earliest things we got. So yeah.
And okay, so I also want to add this part, Chloe. Thank you so much for saying that, and to address Koopa's argument. What Fan is saying, actually, is really going off of what you guys both said. The issue is you're not letting the particular theological and cultural milieu be the setting that informs how to contextualize your expectations. And this is Chris Tilling's entire argument, that Paul is a Trinitarian in the strong sense when you let his Second Temple theological idiom speak for itself. So the manner by which there's no such thing as expectations absolutism. You draw expectations from within a context. And once we do that, I think then you will have a completely different shape of what you're talking about.
All that to say, I think Dan was right about me. I probably don't know what I'm talking about half the time. So, but to say that I don't have the skills or resources, I take offense to that. That's nonsense.
Yeah, he's got the skills and the resources.
Yeah.
He's got resources because he's got me and Tim. So
that's right.
Nah, Coley, you're a smart cat.
But
so.
no, that's the beauty of social media, though, right? Is that I get to engage with the scholar and go, I disagree with you, and here's why. And I'm just a guy.
Yeah, this is the thing that actually is very irritating to me about Dan. And I'm not going to name names, but there are other scholars who are not Christian, mind you, that have told me, how are you the scholar going on social media, going to talking to Christians who are merely just voicing their opinion, and you're basically just in one breath in your book talking about enforcing power dynamics and all this other stuff, in like even in your own videos talking about it, and meanwhile you're like, hey Christian, shut the hell up, I'm the scholar, you don't have the skills, you don't have the resources, I get to make the decisions here. Like, do you, Dan, do you not have any self-awareness?
It's a good question to ask. I don't know. Yeah.
And if we don't have the skills or resources, why should we trust ourselves when we think that Dan is right or wrong?
Right.
Like, that's a weird, I'm not qualified enough then. No, if Dan is being correct or not. Yeah. It works against him.
Don't swim in the ocean of social media if you don't want to get bit by a shark. Like, that's again, where you're at.
I understand the frustration that Dan might have, right? Like, Tim, you and I were just talking about this the other day. Like, I have my paper on onomastics, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you were listening to somebody trying to engage with the argument that I brought forth, and you were telling me, you're like, dude, you looked like you were so frustrated. Like, for context for everybody, there's a paper I have coming out on onomastics in the Gospels showing that they're reliable based off some data sets, right? We'll talk about that later. All you have to know for now is that I for months, all I did all day, every single day, was scrape and organize name data. 50,000 entries, okay? And whenever I am like dealing with somebody trying to explain the statistical argument from onomastics for gospel reliability, you run into people that are just like, oh, okay, so like somebody got some names right, so like that means something, blah, 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 blah. And then, right? And Tim's talking to me over the phone the other day, and he's just like, dude, how does that make you feel? Like, you're sitting here slaving, and you're like, I did 50,000 names just for this guy who doesn't like understand anything to say this, right? I bring this up to say, Dan, I feel your pain, man. I do, okay? But like, I have never once, maybe, okay, I shouldn't say that. I've probably crashed out on people before. But like, my normal mode of operation is not crashing out on uninformed people.
But the funny part is we're not even uninformed. It's just a short video. That's
Okay,
all
fine.
it is.
Let me qualify what I'm saying more.
Right.
My normal
Like,
mode of
that's it.
operation is not to crash out on people that I think are perceive as uninformed, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Jake, Garbs in here. If it makes you feel any better, I am technically a scholar and I eat crayons.
That makes me feel better.
The red crayon is my favorite because it tastes the best.
Yeah.
Because of the red form.
Look, I know this is long-winded, but Dan, again, I feel your pain. But like, dude, you gotta like reflect a little bit, man, because it's just astonishing to me. Like, what are you trying to accomplish other than get people that already agree with you to come rally behind you because they're sick of the power dynamics being enforced from Trinitarian
I saw
Christians?
so many middle-aged white women evangelicals in that comment section just being like, yeah, get them. Get them.
And I didn't even, the first time I watched the video was today. Like, I just don't even care. So
That's crazy. You didn't even
Yeah.
watch it until now. That is hilarious.
dude,
that's why I like
okay.
when
Well,
people-
let me say this about Dan. Like, I respect the work that he's put in as a scholar, but as a social media content creator, the moment he blocked Inspiring Philosophy, I stopped taking him seriously.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
Well, let me put it this way. And then he blocked Mike and then continued to respond to his content. That was the moment where it was just like, okay, well, like,
that was a low T
I don't-
moment.
like that's just bad. That's just bad social media etiquette. You don't block somebody and then continue to respond to them like that. Yeah. And so, yeah.
Why do I feel? Why do I smell a Pelagia video being made about this video?
I have no clue.
I just feel like that might happen.
But this stream that we're doing right
Yes, I feel like there's like a Pelagia video is going to.
now. All right, guys, you heard it here first. Tim has just made a prophecy.
A
If
prediction.
it doesn't come true, he's a false prophet. We have to throw stones at him.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's.
I was gonna.
I don't know. I don't know. I do not have this intuition. So, we'll see whose intuitive reasoning is more truth tracking, I guess. Do you guys have anything else you want to say?
No,
No?
I've got it all off my chest.
Okay.
Let me think.
I'll like
If you guys want access to what I wrote doing the comparative analysis of Dan's view and then the model I came up with, the presence identity model, DM me either on TikTok or Instagram, and I can help you out that way.
Yeah, I was actually going to do something really quick actually about this. Mind you, Tim is our co-host here at Inspiring Philosophy Academy, and with that comes the exposure to a lot of what Tim and I do. Like, you might notice Tim and I are in a very particular wavelength with each other. We operate in very similar ways. We view epistemology, the world, how we go about assessing data, everything. Like, there's a reason why we're black and tan, right? Tim's tan, I'm black, and long story short, I constantly have you guys asking me for lectures on Bayesian epistemology, how to learn some Bayesian epistemology stuff, how to do methodological stuff, like all of these other things that I just like don't have the time, unfortunately, to help people with. And one of the reasons we started Inspiring Philosophy Academy is so that way you guys get to learn who Tim is more, because Tim and I are one mind, essentially.
Two peas in a pod.
Okay, two peas in a pod. Tim runs a ministry called Worldview Mastery, where you guys can actually work with somebody like me, aka Tim, to learn these things, so he can actually teach you these things on one-on-one settings and classroom settings and all this other stuff. And I highly recommend it, because every person that I've seen come out of it that has actually put the work in, I look at them and I say, I'm very impressed with you.
Mitchell, are you still here? Mitchell was one of my students. He was in this chat. Mitchell, if you're here, drop a chat. But yeah, everything Than is saying, super easy. You can go to my TikTok or my Instagram. There's going to be a link. It's going to say school. That's my private community. We do this intensive coaching and training every week as a group. And there's built-in video modules. You have access to me. We'll build you a custom plan. I do this day in and day out. If you have any questions about it, DM me on either TikTok or Instagram. Worldview Mastery. I read that and I love that. I love that so much. I'm not even playing.
By OJ Simpson.
Wait till the summer comes and I go on my hot girl walks and I actually get darker than Tim is.
Oh, you ain't ready to see me get bronze, bro. I get bronze. Yeah.
Oh man. Is this actually Mitchell?
No, it's Mitchell Hansen. Not whoever that is.
Chris Hansen's.
But yeah, guys.
We got some super chats to go through.
Go ahead.
So yeah, let's do this. I personally love John 1:14 for a good argument. You guys any kind of comments?
The word became flesh, dwelt among us.
Based. Noxie, if only Michael Heiser was still alive, he'd take Dan to task, especially on Exodus 23, as he pointed out the divine name in the Hebrew Bible is synonymous with God's actual presence, so God is present in the angel in Exodus 23. I'm not going to bite, but don't worry about it. This is going to be part of the response to Dan, believe it or not, Noxie, so be patient. Yes, and I also do really wish Heiser was still around. I really, really do. Is Tim's argument more that the quote-unquote original data shouldn't be held higher, and not that the original reader's interpretation shouldn't be held higher? Tim?
Yeah, wait, let me read this again. Is Tim's argument more that... No, okay, so my position is that... Okay, let me articulate this again. I'm going to try to make this quick. Dan's strategy is to look at the folk level intuitions of the ancient Israelites. So he's purely looking at it through a cognitive psychological lens. And he wants to use that as a framework to have priority explanatorily over any later theological frameworks or reflections. Thus, we always have to be tethered to how those concepts first circulated. My argument is that we do not have to be prisoners of the past, and that later theological reflections can actually serve as higher order and more mature evidence for those frameworks based on those original concepts. And so we can update what we originally thought. That's what I'm saying that we should be doing. So to make it short, I am rejecting Dan's move to make his methodological approach of the cognitive psychological framework have explanatory priority. I'm rejecting the explanatory priority move. I do not see a good reason to do that. That's what I'm saying.
Good.
Everyone has assumptions that informs their beliefs without active reasoning. This can look like overthinking it, but it's required to understand others. And yeah, new philosophy helps old articulation. I would add in a qualifier to this. Everyone has assumptions that informs their belief without active reasoning. That I'm going to qualify this by stipulating that like this is the Bayesian brain that's happening, right? In other words, people don't realize that this is what's happening because they haven't taken the probably a combo of two things. One is they don't understand, they haven't taken the time, probably rightfully so, because life is really busy, to understand how their brain actually like makes them reason. Which is you have prior experiences and background knowledge, and that filters how you assess new evidence, right? And they haven't introspected enough to see how those prior how that background knowledge informs their assessment of new evidence. So yes, I agree with this. It's not overthinking. It's a very real important thing. But we don't want to use that as a means to like undercut somebody's argument by psychologizing them either, right? What we want to do is identify what those background propositions are and reconstruct those. So then we can go, oh, this is the framework that is probably happening here. That makes sense of how you're assessing the data, rather than just being like, well, here's some psychology stuff debunked, right? Tim, you and I get accused of psychologizing all the time because of this, right? We always go, hey, this is the argument you're making over here, but like, if I'm going to reconstruct this, the only way this is going to work is if like insert XYZ systems, right, to make sense of it, right? And then oftentimes we get accused of psychologizing people when really all we're trying to do is steelman the position by conditionalizing on different parameters, basically.
Yep.
That's a very long-winded answer. Sorry.
Yep. I like it. I like it.
Blocking someone and then still responding to them is
Yo, that is the best assessment. Yo.
Based.
Yo.
Man. Okay. If divinity was a spectrum and oft differentiated by power, is that a good reason to think that Jesus' subordination is ontological and not functional? I'm assuming oft is often.
Yeah.
If divinity was a spectrum and often differentiated by power, is that a good reason to think that Jesus' subordination is ontological and not functional? No, not necessarily. Because when this is okay. I'll just say this. This is one of my problems with Dan's thesis and overall what proponents of a divine identity Christology do. And I'm not saying like this is a nefarious thing you're doing, Koopa, but there's so much ambiguity in certain terms, like name bearing, power, and many more things, where it's like we don't need to have a precisification for every single term whatsoever, right? But we can have precisifications of different terms like power, for instance, but then conditionalize on different precisifications. And depending on how you do this, it's going to yield different results. And this is, again, why I think the way we engage in philosophy when it comes to biblical history is super important. That's not to mean we impose philosophy into the text. This is to mean that we use philosophy in such a way that it actually empowers us to think better and rationalize better as we try to reconstruct the ancient world. So it all depends on what you mean by the word power and differentiated power and all this other stuff. I know that might seem like a non-answer, but Tim, do you have any thoughts, Coley?
What part?
Any of it?
I mean, yeah. Go ahead, Coley.
No, I got nothing.
I mean, I agree with you, Dan, not necessarily. And I just think that when we look at what Chris Tilling puts forth as what he calls the God pattern, which is going to be the pattern of speech or actions by which is a unique to Yahweh. And then we see in places where Paul parallels that God pattern to the way in which he talks about Christ. That's going to serve as, well, better evidence that any functional subordinationism is not ontological subordination. This is a crazy comment. I don't know why he came out the gate like that.
The OJ is he's an acquired taste, but he's really funny. He gives me crap all the time, and I love it. Okay, so he's like one of those guys that he gives you crap but like,
he loves you or something.
Yeah.
This is his love language.
So for the twink in the top right.
It's funny because I actually was talking through I was talking with a student at my church who's a full preterist and walking them through why this is a terrible position.
Are you a partial preterist, bro?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you?
I am.
I don't know. I
All right, we're done with that. So I'm just kidding.
we should probably answer his question. You got any resources?
Yeah, answer his question.
I don't have any. I just did it on my own.
Oh, okay.
Dan, what are the
I don't have like a book or anything.
Do you have any resources on full hyperpreterism or anything like that?
That's what I was asking you, Than. That's why I was asking.
I don't off the top of my head.
You know what? Actually, Gavin Ortlund recently did some videos on this on preterism. So there you go. Go on his YouTube channel. He did a video on preterism.
Yeah, we could just do the Dawa thing here.
What is that?
ChatGPT. I'll just ask ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Chic GPT.
Yeah. But there you go. Gavin Ortlund, he did a video recently about full preterism and why it's heretical. I can't remember the title of the video though. But scroll through his videos. You'll see it.
ChatGPT. Okay. Here. You see this?
Man, that is a bare ChatGPT.
What?
It's all right, bro.
What is that supposed to mean?
You should see mine.
You don't use it. That's all.
I changed my button
is that a bad thing?
Look at this. I changed my action button on my phone to pull up ChatGPT.
Hey, no, Than. I use it to manage so much stuff, so I'm constantly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I use it for the most random questions. I'll be like, "Why does my dog bark when we play?"
Is the whole business infrastructure is on chat.
Let's see what it's got here.
Oh yeah, this ChatGPT is not dialed in. It's still using emojis. Yeah, nah, we are not lit.
I don't do what. Okay, debunking. Are you watching this, OJ?
He could easily throw something good up there. I've never heard of this.
I don't trust ChatGPT,
dude. It's not even on thinking mode.
Look at this debates. Okay, Michael Brown,
bro,
James White.
This ChatGPT is not dialed in at all.
There you go. Okay.
The bottom line.
The bottom line. He's like, that's it. And that's that.
Yeah, man. Look, I eventually I'll look into this more, OJ, but it's just not top of mind right now. I can ask Mike. Maybe he has something. But yeah. Looks like we're done with super chats. Any other final thoughts? Coley, where can people find you? You got your link. Actually, you know what? Guys, shut up. Stop doing whatever you're doing. Chat. Go sub to Coley and go sub to Worldview Mastery.
Yeah.
If you are in a position where you want to learn more stuff in a more one-on-one environment with somebody that actually is very articulate in these things,
go to me.
Don't DM me because I will not see it. Contact him at Worldview Mastery.
Please do.
Tim,
I'd love to help you.
Guys, just look. I love all of you. It's just I can't keep up. I have 1,728 notifications right now.
Popular guy.
This is I bring this up to say I see the messages. I see the questions always coming in from you guys for help on these things. I can't. I just do not have the bandwidth. If you are having doubts with your faith and you want help building the tools to actually reason properly through these things, 2 big resources. Get that one-on-one coaching with Tim, and talk about doubts as a ministry that you can go with to have like help with pointing in those directions as well. 2 really good resources at your disposal. Tim is going to give you the tools to actually think properly, where talk about doubts is one of those things where you go to talk to an expert on a particular question you might have. 2 very different tools, but they're going to be there for you guys. So I love all of you. I just cannot. I cannot. I can't be that guy. So, but Tim can be that guy. So I want 1,700 people messaging Tim. That's all I want.
Yep. Everything that Dan is saying is completely correct. We'll everyone who joins my private community gets a custom-made strategy plan based on where you're at and where you're wanting to go. We have all the infrastructure to facilitate that process to make sure that you have the utmost success doing so. And our community is growing. It's pretty large. There are about almost 50 people going through that process currently right now who are regularly attending our calls, who are working through their plans, who are watching the video modules and everything and talking to me on a regular basis. I'd love to help you out if that's what you're looking for to do.
Beast. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to cut the stream then. Good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. Until next time.